Resident Evil 4 is widely considered as one of the most important and influential video games ever made. It is considered as a significant milestone in the evolution of survival horror games, and its success influenced the development of other games, including Gears of War, Dead Space, and The Last of Us, all of which borrowed elements from Resident Evil 4. And faithfully remaking this influential title was no easy task. It definitely had some big shoes to fill. People loved Leon's cheesy one-liners.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Ashley's cute ears, and even its dorky villagers yelling in Spanish. Resident Evil 4 was one of the most iconic video games of all time. I'm Arcadenaut here, and today I'll be talking about why Resident Evil 4 is such an important work of art that needs to be played, and how Capcom nailed remaking this iconic game and probably marking its second golden age with it. First of all, you might wonder why people just can't stop talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake if you haven't played it already. Besides being incredibly faithful to the original title, RE4 Remake also brought back the same nostalgia with new gameplay mechanics, updated visuals, newly modeled characters, and proved once again how a game should be remade correctly, as being one of the first games that blended the action and survival horror elements, presenting it with dark and eerie atmosphere. Resident Evil 4 combined these elements with its distinctive visuals, creating a world that was both frightening and captivating. And I can say this both for the original and the remake. RE Engine's AI improved the whole challenge that RE4 presents, possibly making the whole experience more difficult than the original. I finished Resident Evil 4 Remake in 18 hours and 39 minutes, doing every request, collecting every item in hardcore mode, and right after my first playthrough, I started playing in professional mode to sate my hunger. Some of the chapters felt a bit longer and frustrating, but that is mostly because of my strict ammo and resource management, I assume. The memorable, immersive and tense experience and feeling is still there, making it one of the best remakes and survival horror experiences you could ever experience. If you feel too scared to play Resident Evil 4, let me tell you that most of us started to dig deeper into the world of horror games with Resident Evil 4. Its action blended with survival horror will help you to get used to this genre. Our protagonist Leon S. Kennedy is more experienced than before, as he survived the horrors of Raccoon City during the events of Resident Evil 2, underwent a special training, and now considered as the new John Wick of video game characters. Leon felt more alive than the original this time, as he grunted during reloading his weapons, cursing the mutated villagers alongside with me. He felt so well-designed character than before. And not only with Leon, but Capcom did a really good job redesigning and adding flavor to each and every character. Louis had more depth and importance than before. Ada is yet again deadly and beautiful as always. And Ashley didn't make me go crazy during my hardcore mode playthrough. On the other hand, Resident Evil 4's villains, Los Illuminados, felt more terrifying and deadlier than before. Rather than fighting against the T-virus zombies, we now have cultist villagers who are carrying a parasite called Las Plagas in their body, waiting to be hatched and unleash horror. As being cultists rather than previous abominations of Resident Evil series, you will travel across villages, farms and even fish sometime to save Ashley, the daughter of US presidents, from Los Illuminados. And starting with this village of nasty cultists, you will try to survive your way through castle ruins full of surprises, and then the island with your remaining sanity and resources. From the first chapter to the last, Resident Evil 4 Remake protected its memorable level and art design while changing the flow of progress during some of the last chapters. As I mentioned before, Resident Evil's art design is still captivating and memorable, how it merges the gothic and industrial aesthetics while presenting an action survival horror experience. You will most possibly find yourself exploring the previous areas to collect any mystery quests or collectibles. However, just like the original, the castle and the island areas will present more linear gameplay, with Leon and Ashley trying to fight desperately against these mutated villagers or bald cultists that chant in Spanish. Resident Evil 4's world is full of dilapidated villages, gothic halls full of cultists who are carrying shields and crossbows. It can still present a well-designed world that feels both ancient and modern. And because of that, you will have your favorite chapters and you will have your nightmare chapters, which would probably haunt you for years. Resident Evil 4 always offers something new, some new challenge to you, whether it be gigantic bugs that would try to surround you or infested armors that would try to cut Leon in half. You will find yourself asking when Resident Evil 4 stops at throwing something new at you until you meet the Regenerators or their mutated versions, Iron Maidens. I used to be terrified of them when I was a kid, calling my grandma to watch my Resident Evil 4 playthrough. But now, after 18 years, I found myself smiling when I heard their breathing sound for the first time. It was time for revenge. As for my nightmare chapter, I nearly ran out of ammunition during the last sequence of chapter 8, where we try to defend Ashley as she was raising the bridge that we need to cross. At that point, I looked at my mass amount of fortune of 300k and realized that I can never save my money like this in real life. Resident Evil 4 Remake will teach you when it's time to invest on something good that would benefit you later on. Gameplay-wise, Resident Evil 4 Remake features significant improvements over the original. The controls have been modernized, it offers more fluid movement, and a new parry mechanic that would save you a lot from dire situations. With your combat knife or any kind of a knife that you can find, you can parry nearly every melee attack, deflecting their move to have a chance to deal melee damage, to knock your enemies or just to shoot them. You probably know by now, but you can even parry the chainsaw attack of Dr. Salvador. There is even a new sequence of Leon knife fighting against Jack Krauser that is purely based on evading melee attacks, parrying and then countering without any weapons. And if I were to talk more about lovely villagers and mutated cultists we are facing, we still have the highly memorable enemy designs just like the original. From the iconic and the original Chainsaw Man Dr. Salvador to El Gigante, gigantic bugs, mutated wolves, we have the original enemies that will be carved to your mind with each encounter. Their presence, the sounds they make still create the same sense of fear and unease just like I felt when I was 11 or 12, playing the original. These enemies are not just targets that you need to kill before moving on, but they are obstacles that you can also skip, risking your progress, or use some trick and strategy to down them quickly by shooting the dynamites they hold, luring them into the bear traps. Since I no longer feel the fear that I used to feel playing the survival horror genre, my whole playthrough was more inclined on resource management and me trying to save as much as resource while trying to survive on hardcore mode. If I were to go back to the gameplay mechanics, we still have our inventory case that we can manage our weapons and items quickly, insert colorful gems into precious artifacts to increase their worth to earn more money for upgrades, and as a new mechanic, we can also craft bullets and grenades with the gunpowder and resources we can find, similar to the Resident Evil 2 Remake's crafting system. And we also have the old quicktime events by several occasions that would help Leon to do cool backflip to dodge any incoming attacks. But those quicktime events are nothing that complex. Despite these improvements, Resident Evil 4 still manages to stay faithful to the original, presenting both the nostalgic level design and eerie feeling, while changing some of the events and areas that would also surprise the veterans. However, what amazed me a lot this time is the use of the sound design, that is another essential element of its overall ambience. Resident Evil 4 leaves you in total silence when Leon is alone and safe, before or after a long action sequence, giving you a time for a relief or a quick smoke and to organize your resources and plan your way ahead. And trust me, you will do this a lot in hardcore mode. On the other hand, Resident Evil 4 motivates you to play in stealth, taking out villagers one by one before you are noticed, or just to save your ammunition by doing these. Thanks to the RE engine that Resident Evil 4 is developed with, Leon can be knocked back with shovels or even be body blocked if you plan poorly and surrounded. As a good change to the original, this time Ashley does not have any health bars just like in the original. She can become incapacitated after receiving damages, and to recover from that, she either needs time or Leon to help her. However, what I realized is that she can be kidnapped quicker than the original, so you can just ignore Ashley and focus on your enemies. But on the other hand, this time Ashley felt like she can manage on her own. She hides behind while Leon is trying to aim, and you feel like she also grows by each chapter you complete. I remember using yellow herbs to increase Ashley's maximum health back in the day, and thank Capcom that thing is over for good. You can have all the yellow herbs for yourself, because you'll need it.
Yeah, fat chance, Ramon. The girl's just fine. With me.
And the reason that I mentioned about the art design or the atmosphere of Resident Evil 4 Remake is to show how faithful the remake actually is. I've always found Resident Evil 4 Remake as a risky move, and to be frank, I thought that it wasn't that necessary to even remake it. People still play the original RE4 and enjoy it, so it would have been a total disaster for Capcom if Resident Evil 4 Remake was a failure or huge letdown. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is an excellent remake of one of the most influential games ever made. From your first step to the village to the last merchant stop, you will inhale Resident Evil 4's unique gothic and industrial aesthetic. You will learn a bit Spanish so that you can join a cult, and you will crave more of Resident Evil when you are done. And then you will either want to play Resident Evil 2 or 3 Remake if you missed those, or just continue to the next difficulty mode just like I did. And when you reach to the point where you meet regenerators, if you ever find yourself staring at their booty more than a normal, healthy person would, you will question yourself, asking if you will ever find the love that you desperately search for. Resident Evil 4 Remake stands out as a true testament to Capcom's recent success, and together with previous Resident Evil remakes and mainline titles of 7 and Village, they prove how much they care about their own titles and want to preserve their unique atmosphere. The original Resident Evil 4 was a landmark game that revolutionized the survival horror genre, and the remake successfully builds upon that legacy with remade visuals, art design, gameplay mechanics, and level design during some of the chapters. And it's easily one of the best games of this year, a remake that is so faithful to the original that you both feel the element of surprise and nostalgia at the same time. And I can't wait for the next remake that Capcom plans for the future. My guess it will either be Code Veronica or Resident Evil 5, and I really hope for a Dino Crisis remake, but I hope to see the same treatment for those titles either. And as always, thanks for watching today's video, and as for the next, I might enter the world of Code Veronica to sate my hunger for Resident Evil series. More will soon to come, so stay tuned.